For 8 long years, the little girl kept doing the same thing over and over again, like her body was trying to tell the world a secret nobody wanted to hear. She would press her hand to her left ear, rub it, wince, then pretend she was fine. Doctors called it congenital. Specialists called it irreversible. And every single time her father asked the same question, "Are you sure?" they gave the same cold answer, "There's nothing we can do." So her father did what powerful men do when they're desperate. He threw money at the impossible. He spent millions, flew across countries, sat in the offices of the most celebrated experts on earth and begged them to look again, to try again, to please not give up on his child. They all shrugged. Until one day, in the quiet corners of his mansion, a maid noticed something no one else had paid attention to. Something dark, something lodged deep where it shouldn't be. And what she found inside that child's ear would change everything, and expose a truth so shocking, it will leave you speechless. Her father, Dorian Vale, was a billionaire, private jets, guarded estates, more money than most people see in a lifetime. But none of it could buy the one thing his daughter deserved most. Because little Liana Vale had been born unable to hear. 8 years old, and she had never heard a single sound. And Dorian tried everything. Hello, family, and welcome to Fiction Stories TV. If you love deeply emotional stories about love, loss, and unexpected reunions, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. Don't forget to turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story from us. Your support truly means everything. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive in. The tweezers slipped. Not from clumsiness, but from fear. Mara Quinn froze with her hand hovering inches from 8-year-old Liana Vale's ear. Breath trapped in her throat as the little girl flinched and clenched her fists so tight her knuckles went pale. "Mara," Liana mouthed, wide eyes glossy with silent tears. She could not hear her own whimper, but she felt it shake her chest. "I know," Mara whispered, even though whispering was pointless. It was the only voice her nerves could find. "I know, baby, I'm right here, look at me." Liana tried to focus on Mara's lips. Mara swallowed hard, held up her free hand, and signed slowly the way she had practiced in secret. "I won't hurt you. Trust me." Liana's lower lip trembled. Footsteps thudded somewhere down the hall, heavy, angry. Mara's pulse spiked. Somebody was coming. She angled the flashlight again. Deep inside Liana's ear canal, something dark sat like a plug jammed into a bottle. It was so obvious Mara's stomach twisted with one furious question. How did nobody see this? The door handle rattled. "Mara," a man's voice thundered from the other side. "Open this door right now." Mara's blood went cold. That voice belonged to Dorian Vale, the billionaire whose house she cleaned, the man whose grief filled every room, the man who had spent a fortune chasing miracles. Mara shut her eyes for half a second. If he walked in now and saw her holding tweezers near his daughter's ear, he would ruin her life before she could blink. Liana reached out and grabbed Mara's wrist, begging. Not with sound, but with shaking fingers and desperate eyes that said, "Please, it hurts, please." The door banged again. "Open it." Mara forced herself to breathe, then leaned in closer to Liana. Her hands steadied, because there was no time left to hesitate. "Okay," Mara murmured, heart hammering. "Okay, one more pull, just one." She gripped the edge of the dark mass, as gently as she could, and pulled. It resisted. Liana's face twisted. She squeezed her eyes shut. Mara stopped instantly. "Look at me," she said, voice cracking. "Look at me, Liana. If it hurts too much, I stop, I stop." Liana opened her eyes again, tears spilling. Mara signed, "Breathe. I'm here, you're safe." The handle rattled again, frantic now, then the lock clicked. Mara's stomach dropped. He had a key. The door swung inward. Dorian Vale filled the doorway like a storm, jaw clenched, eyes burning. And behind him 2 security men stepped in as if they were walking into a crime scene. His gaze snapped from Mara to the tweezers, to Liana sitting on the edge of the tub, her small body tense and trembling. "What did you do?" Dorian demanded, voice low and lethal. "What are you doing to my child?" Mara lifted both hands instantly, tweezers held away like a confession. "Sir, please, I can explain." Dorian stepped forward, so fast one of the guards reached out as if to restrain him. "Explain why you're holding metal tools near my daughter's head." Liana turned toward her father, startled. She saw his anger. She could not hear it, but she felt it in the sharp movements of his mouth and the tightness in his face. Her eyes widened in fear. Then, suddenly, she pressed her palm to her left ear and winced. Dorian froze, just for a breath, because that gesture was familiar. For 8 years, his daughter had done that. For 8 years, every doctor had told him the same thing. Nothing we can do. For 8 years, Dorian had spent millions, flown across the world, demanded specialist after specialist, begged them to look again, then watched them shrug with professional pity. And now, a maid stood in his bathroom with tweezers, insisting she had found something they all missed. Mara swallowed. "Sir, she's been in pain. She keeps touching her ear. I looked inside and there's something." "Stop," Dorian snapped. "Stop talking, step away from her." Mara's throat tightened. "If I step away now, she'll still have it inside. Sir, please, please just let me show you." Dorian's eyes narrowed. "Show me what?" Mara turned the flashlight so it angled toward the ear again. Her hands shook. "Look, right there, it's dark, it's lodged deep. She's been suffering." Dorian leaned in without meaning to, his anger colliding with the desperate part of him that had been starving for hope since the day Liana was born. He looked, and his face changed. Because even in the dim light, even to an untrained eye, something was clearly there. Dorian jerked back, breath sharp. "How?" The security guard stepped forward. "Sir, do you want us to remove her from the room?" "No," Dorian said, voice tight. His eyes stayed locked on the darkness in his daughter's ear. "Nobody touches her." Liana looked between them, confused and frightened, one hand clamped over her ear. Mara whispered, "She trusts me." Dorian's gaze flashed to Mara. "You don't get to tell me who my daughter trusts." Mara flinched, then pushed through the fear. "Sir, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm trying to help her." Dorian's jaw worked as if he was chewing on rage. "Help!" He laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Do you know how many people have said that word to me? Do you know how many men in white coats have smiled and promised help while taking my money and giving me nothing?" Mara's eyes burned. "Then let this be different. Let one person actually help." Dorian stared at her. Liana suddenly tugged at Dorian's sleeve, eyes wet. She pointed at Mara, then placed her hand on her own chest, then signed clumsily, the way she and Mara had been practicing. "Her safe." Dorian's breath caught. Because Liana had never signed in front of anyone except her speech therapist. Never. She hid it like a secret. Now she was choosing Mara. Dorian's anger wavered for half a second. Then the billionaire in him, the frightened father, the man who had been burned by hope too many times, slammed the door on that softness. "No," he said, voice hard. "We're going to the hospital, now." Mara opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Hospital meant doctors. Doctors meant proof. Proof meant she would not be accused of hurting a child. But it also meant the obstruction could be pushed deeper if they were careless. Dorian pointed at Mara. "And you're coming with us, you don't leave my sight." Mara nodded, throat tight. "Okay." Dorian turned to security. "If she tries to run, you stop her." Mara's face went pale. "Sir, I'm not a criminal." Dorian didn't answer. He simply picked up Liana, held her close, and walked out like a man carrying a fragile universe. If you're still watching right now, do not go anywhere, because what the doctors reveal in the next hour will change everything Dorian thinks he knows, and it will expose a kind of betrayal money cannot fix. And if you like stories that hit you in the heart and keep you on edge, tap like and subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. 8 years earlier, the day Liana Vale was born, the world did not start with a cry. It started with a flat, dead quiet that made nurses move too fast and doctors avoid Dorian's eyes. Dorian had stood behind the glass, watching his wife, Selene, fight for breath with a face twisted in pain and courage. He had tried to hold her hand. He had tried to tell her she was safe. Then there was blood, there was shouting, there was a rushed emergency. And then, just like that, Selene was gone. 1 minute she was there, hair damp with sweat, eyes locked on his, whispering, "Promise me you'll love her enough for both of us." The next minute, the doctor was saying words Dorian could not absorb. Hemorrhage, complications. We did everything we could. He had felt the floor disappear. They placed baby Liana in his arms while his wife's body still lay behind a curtain. Liana was tiny, perfect, warm, blinking up at him like he was the first thing she ever saw. Dorian had looked down at her and felt two things hit him at once. Love, so sudden it hurt. And guilt, so deep it felt like a sentence. Weeks later, Dorian realized something else. Liana did not startle at sound. She did not turn toward voices. She did not calm when lullabies played. Doctors ran tests, more tests, even more tests. One specialist, then 5, then 10. The conclusion became a cruel chorus. She's profoundly deaf. It's congenital. It's irreversible. There's no cure. Dorian refused the word irreversible like it was an insult. He flew to the best hospitals in Switzerland and Germany and the United States. He demanded experts. He paid, he donated, he sponsored research, he offered anything. Every time, he left with the same polite sympathy and the same empty hands. At home, the mansion grew quiet in a way that made even the air feel heavy. Dorian bought Liana the best toys, the best tutors, the best therapists. But when he spoke, his daughter did not hear. And when she cried in silence. He learned sign language late, clumsily, because it felt like admitting defeat, like accepting she would never hear, "I love you," the way Selene would have wanted. Some nights Dorian stood in the hallway outside Liana's room and stared at the wall where Selene's photo hung. Her smile seemed to judge him. He would whisper, "I'm trying," like Selene could hear him from whatever place dead wives go. He tried to be father and mother. But some things are not about effort, they are about connection. And he did not know how to connect to silence. The staff learned quickly, do not mention Liana's deafness. Do not treat her like she is fragile. Do not touch her without permission. Do not get too close. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Glenwood, enforced those rules like religion. "This house is not a playground for your emotions," she told every new maid. "You clean, you leave, you do not bond with the child." People nodded because they wanted their jobs. Then Mara Quinn arrived. She was 26, with tired eyes and a softness she couldn't hide no matter how hard she tried. Mrs. Glenwood looked her up and down. "Do you have a problem following instructions?" "No, ma'am," Mara said quickly. "Good," Mrs. Glenwood replied, "because Mr. Vale does not tolerate mistakes." Mara nodded again, understood. Mrs. Glenwood pushed a clipboard into her hands. "East wing, dust, bathrooms, no wandering." Mara took the clipboard and started walking, trying to ignore the way her stomach twisted with anxiety. She needed this job, not for luxury, not for dreams, for survival. Her grandmother's nursing home bills were swallowing her alive. Her brother, Kelechi, had died 2 years ago because they couldn't afford fast treatment when he got sick. By the time they got help, it was too late. Mara carried that grief like a stone in her chest. It made her notice suffering in others the way a burn makes you flinch at heat. On her first day, she saw Liana. The little girl sat by a window, drawing in a sketchbook with intense focus, face calm, almost too calm. Mara slowed, just for a second. Liana looked up. Her eyes were bright, curious, and lonely. Mara smiled gently, then gave a small wave. Liana hesitated, then waved back. Mara's heart softened. Then she saw it. Liana's hand drifted to her left ear. She rubbed it, pressed it, winced slightly, then went back to drawing as if pain was normal. Mara kept walking, but her mind snagged on that moment. Because deafness didn't explain pain. Not like that. Over the next few days, Mara saw Liana often, always quiet, always observing. And always touching her ear. One afternoon, Mara entered the library to dust and found Dorian crouched beside Liana. Liana had dropped a pile of blocks, and her face scrunched up, silent tears forming. Dorian spoke rapidly, lips moving with urgent comfort. He tried to sign too, but his hands fumbled. It's okay, Daddy. Here." Liana watched his hands, then looked away, ashamed to cry. Then her face twisted. She clamped her hand over her left ear and curled inward. Dorian froze. His eyes flicked around the room, helpless, searching for an explanation. Mara stood at the doorway with a cloth in her hands and felt a familiar rage rise in her chest. That look on Dorian's face was the look she had seen on her mother's face in hospital corridors, the look of being powerless while someone you love suffers. Dorian's gaze snapped to Mara, sharp and defensive. Mara dropped her eyes and stepped back, obeying the rule. But the image stayed in her like a warning. That night, Mara lay in her tiny staff quarters staring at the ceiling, hearing Kalech's voice in her memory. "I'm fine," he had lied. Mara had believed him because she wanted to. Now she watched Liana lie with her body, pretending pain was just part of life. Mara couldn't accept it. The next morning, Mara found Liana alone in the sunroom. The girl held up her sketchbook as if she had been waiting. Inside was a drawing of Mara, just Mara holding a broom drawn with surprising tenderness. Mara's throat tightened. "That's me." Liana smiled, reading Mara's expression. Mara pointed to herself. "Mara." Liana watched her lips closely, then mimicked soundless. "Mara." Mara blinked, stunned. "You can read lips." Liana nodded proudly. Mara crouched. She pointed to Liana. "And you're Liana." Liana's smile faltered. Then she pressed her ear again, wincing. Mara's hands moved slowly, uncertain. Then she tried a basic sign she had looked up online late at night. "Hurt." Liana's eyes widened with surprise. She nodded quickly, relieved someone understood. Mara pointed toward the ear. "Where?" Liana pointed, then used her finger to show depth, deeper and deeper, then shook her head as if something was stuck. Mara's stomach clenched. She glanced toward the hallway, then back at Liana. "Can I see?" Mara whispered, then realized again the whisper did nothing. So she used gestures. She mimed looking into her own ear, then made a questioning face. Liana hesitated, then nodded. Mara took a small flashlight from the cleaning cart, hands trembling, and knelt beside Liana by the window where the light was best. She angled the flashlight carefully and looked. At first, shadow. Then a dark, dense mass, lodged deep. Mara's breath caught so hard she almost choked. It looked like hardened wax or something worse, something that had been there a long time. Mara pulled back, heart hammering. Liana stared at her, frightened. She signed urgently, fast. Mara didn't catch it all, but the fear was clear. Mara forced a calm smile and signed slowly. "I see it." Liana's eyes filled with tears. Mara's mind raced. If it was visible now, it had been visible before. So how did no doctor remove it? Unless they saw it and didn't care. Unless there was profit in calling a child irreversible. Mara's anger shook her. Mrs. Glenwood's voice snapped in her memory. "Do not interfere." Mara stood quickly, hands sweating. She signed, "Wait." Liana nodded, clutching the sketchbook to her chest like armor. Mara walked into the hallway and almost collided with Mrs. Glenwood. The head housekeeper's eyes narrowed instantly. "Why are you in this wing?" "I'm cleaning, ma'am," Mara said too fast. Mrs. Glenwood's gaze flicked past her into the sunroom and landed on Liana. "Why is the child with you?" Mara felt her mouth go dry. "She showed me a drawing." Mrs. Glenwood stepped closer, voice low and sharp. I warned you. You are not here to build attachments. Mara swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Glenwood's eyes hardened. If Mr. Vale senses you are meddling, you will be thrown out of this house so fast you won't even collect your last pay. Mara nodded, pulse pounding. Understood. Mrs. Glenwood walked away. Mara returned to Liana with shaking hands. That night, she could not sleep. She thought of Liana's flinch, the dark mass lodged where it shouldn't be, and her brother's voice in her memory. Mara pictured herself doing nothing, obeying rules, watching Liana suffer, then one day hearing someone say, "We should have caught it earlier." Mara couldn't survive that. The next day, Dorian left for an overnight trip. The mansion relaxed slightly, like it could breathe without the weight of his grief walking through it. Mrs. Glenwood was stricter than ever. No mistakes while Mr. Vale is away, she warned the staff. He will be in a foul mood when he returns. Mara's heart pounded because she knew what she was about to do. She waited until late evening. She checked hallways. She listened for footsteps. Then she went to Liana's room. Liana sat on the floor arranging toy animals into neat rows. When she saw Mara, her face brightened, then worried. Mara closed the door behind her softly, then held up her hands and signed, "Help." Liana stared. Mara pointed to Liana's ear. Liana's eyes widened. She glanced at the door as if imagining someone bursting in, then looked back at Mara with fear and hope battling in her expression. Mara swallowed and signed, "Gentle, stop if pain." Liana hesitated. Then she nodded, slow and brave. Mara's throat tightened. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, thank you." She washed her hands. She sterilized the tweezers with alcohol. She laid out clean cloths. Her fingers shook as she picked up the flashlight. Liana climbed onto a chair near the desk lamp, her posture stiff, eyes locked on Mara's face. Mara knelt and angled the light. The dark plug sat there like a cruel secret. Mara breathed in, then out, then signed, "Breathe." Liana tried. Mara slid the tweezers in gently, not forcing, just catching the edge. It didn't move. Mara's stomach dropped. Liana's eyes widened, her hands clenched. Mara immediately pulled back. She signed fast, "Stop. Are you okay?" Liana nodded quickly, but her lip trembled. Mara's eyes burned. "I'm sorry," she whispered, then signed, "I'm sorry." Liana lifted a shaky hand and touched Mara's wrist like she was comforting her. That small kindness nearly broke Mara. Mara tried again, even gentler. This time, the mass shifted. Mara's breath hitched. She pulled slowly, carefully, millimeter by millimeter, like she was pulling a thorn from the soul of the house. Then it came free. A dense, dark plug, bigger than Mara expected, sat in the tweezers like proof. Mara froze. Liana blinked. Her face changed. First confusion. Then shock. Then, slowly, her eyes widened as if she had just stepped into a new universe. Her mouth opened. She inhaled sharply. A sound. An actual sound. Mara's knees almost gave out. Liana turned her head slightly, looking around the room like she was trying to locate something invisible. Mara heard it too. A soft ticking. The clack on the wall. Liana gasped again, louder this time, then pressed both hands to her ears as if sound was too big to hold. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then she made a small, broken noise that sounded like a laugh trying to be born. Mara covered her mouth with trembling fingers. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears exploding. Liana's eyes locked onto Mara's lips. She stared as if she was seeing language for the first time. Then, with fierce concentration, she shaped a word. "Duh." Mara's heart stopped. Liana swallowed, tried again, voice trembling. "Dad." Mara collapsed onto the carpet, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. Liana stared at her own hands, then at the clock, then at Mara, and cried with sound, now little shaking cries that filled the room like rain hitting dry ground. Mara reached for her gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay, you're okay." Liana's eyes darted around the room again, overwhelmed. Then she flinched, suddenly, because she heard something else. Footsteps. Coming closer. Mara's blood turned ice. The door handle rattled. Mara snatched the tweezers and the plug and shoved them into a cloth, hands moving fast. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The door banged. Mara. Dorian's voice. Mara's body went stiff. Liana looked toward the door, terrified, because now she could hear anger, even if she didn't understand all the words. "Mara," Liana whispered, voice small. Mara swallowed and signed. "Stay calm, I'm here." The lock clicked. The door swung open. And Dorian Vale stepped in like a nightmare. That was the moment you saw at the beginning. Dorian's gaze snapped from Mara to Liana, and he froze when he saw tears on his daughter's face. "What happened?" he demanded, rushing forward. "Liana." Liana flinched at the loudness, hands flying to her ears. Dorian's eyes widened. "She heard that," he breathed. Mara's throat tightened. "Sir." Dorian whirled on Mara. "What did you do?" Mara lifted the cloth in her trembling hand. "I removed something from her ear. She's been in pain for months. I saw it. I couldn't ignore it." Dorian's jaw clenched. "You touched her without my permission." "I know," Mara said, voice cracking. "I know. And if you fire me, if you call the police, I won't fight you, but she can hear." Dorian stared at her like his mind refused to accept reality. Then Liana looked up at him, tears still on her cheeks, and whispered, "Dad." The word hit Dorian like a punch. He froze. His eyes filled instantly, like emotion bypassed his pride and went straight for his soul. "Say that again," he whispered. "Dad," Liana repeated, trembling, voice small but real. Dorian made a broken sound and pulled her into his arms so fiercely she squeaked. He held her like she was the last thing keeping him alive. Then he pulled back and stared at Mara again, anger and gratitude colliding so hard his face looked twisted. "This is impossible," he snapped, as if anger could make the world stable again. "This is not how it works." Mara shook her head. "It worked. It's working right now." Dorian's eyes flicked to the cloth. "What did you remove?" Mara opened the cloth carefully. The dark plug sat there like a confession. Dorian stared at it, sickened. That was inside her. Mara nodded, tears on her cheeks. "Yes." Dorian's hands shook. 8 years, he whispered, voice cracking. 8 years and that was inside her. Mara whispered, "I'm so sorry." Dorian's face hardened suddenly, fear turning to fury. "We're going to the hospital," he said. "Now." Mara nodded. "Yes, sir." Dorian pointed at security in the hall. You stay with her. She doesn't leave." Mara's stomach dropped. "Sir, please, I'm not running." Dorian didn't look at her. He was already lifting Liana and moving. The drive to the hospital felt like a chase. Liana sat in the back seat clutching a stuffed rabbit, flinching at every horn, every bump, every sudden sound. Tears kept spilling down her cheeks because sound was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dorian held her hand tightly. He kept talking, even though Liana barely understood everything yet. "It's okay," he said over and over. "You're okay, Daddy, here." Mara sat on the other side, watched by a guard, her hands clenched in her lap. Liana turned her head toward Mara, eyes searching. "Mara." Mara leaned in. "I'm here." Liana's voice trembled. "You stayed." Mara nodded, tears burning. "I promised." At the hospital, doctors swarmed as soon as they recognized Dorian Vale. A nurse rushed forward. "Mr. Vale, we can get you into a private suite right away." Dorian's eyes were wild. "I don't want luxury," he snapped. "I want answers." They ushered them into a bright room with too many lights. Liana curled against Dorian, overwhelmed. She signed quickly to Mara, hands shaking, too loud. Mara nodded and signed back. Breathe. Look at me. Liana tried. A doctor entered, mid-50s, confident, crisp coat, a man used to speaking to powerful people. I'm Dr. Harlan Sato, he said, extending a hand. Mr. Vale. Dorian ignored the hand. My daughter can hear. Dr. Sato blinked. I'm sorry. She can hear, Dorian repeated, voice sharp. She said Dad today. She reacted to sound. She has never reacted to sound. Dr. Sato's expression shifted into cautious professionalism. That would be highly unusual given her history. Dorian leaned forward, eyes blazing. Then examine her, now. Dr. Sato nodded quickly. Of course, we'll run imaging and do an ear exam. A nurse wheeled in equipment. Liana tensed. Mara stepped closer. Can I stay with her? Dorian snapped, no. Liana grabbed Mara's sleeve instantly, panic on her face. No, Mara, stay. Dorian froze. Dr. Sato's eyebrows lifted. She's speaking. Dorian's face tightened. Just do what you have to do, he said, voice breaking. Mara leaned in toward Dorian, desperate. Sir, she's scared. She needs someone she trusts. Dorian's jaw clenched. She trusts me. Liana flinched at his loudness and pressed her hands to her ears. Dorian's face crumpled for a moment. Then he whispered, softer, Okay, Mara, stay, but you don't touch her. Mara nodded quickly. Yes, sir. The exam felt endless. Liana shook with every strange sound, every beep, every clink of tools. Mara signed to her constantly, You're safe. Breathe, almost done. Liana watched Mara's hands like they were a rope, keeping her from falling. After imaging, Dr. Sato stepped out to review results. Dorian paced the room like a man about to explode. He turned on Mara suddenly. How long did you know? Mara swallowed. I noticed she kept touching her ear. I looked with a flashlight. That's all. Dorian's voice cracked with anger. And you decided to play doctor. Mara flinched. I decided not to watch her suffer. Dorian stared at her like he wanted to hate her but couldn't make it stick. Liana whispered, Dad. Dorian's anger softened instantly. He looked at his daughter, eyes wet. Yes, baby, he said, voice shaking. Liana pointed at Mara. She help. Dorian swallowed hard. Dr. Sato returned with a tablet in his hand. His face looked different now, less confident. He cleared his throat. Mr. Vale. Dorian stopped packing. Tell me. Dr. Sato hesitated. Your daughter had an obstruction deep in the ear canal. Based on the swelling pattern, it appears it has been there a long time. Dorian's mouth went dry. An obstruction. Yes, Dr. Sato said. Removing it would allow sound waves to reach the inner ear, assuming her auditory pathway is intact. It appears it is. Dorian stared, stunned. So she wasn't irreversibly deaf. Dr. Sato's eyes flicked away. She has hearing loss, yes, but the obstruction likely prevented hearing almost completely. With therapy, she may improve significantly. Dorian's hands curled into fists. 8 years, he whispered. Mara's eyes filled again. Dorian's gaze snapped to Dr. Sato. How did no one catch it? Dr. Sato's jaw tightened. I reviewed her file briefly. She has extensive records. Dorian stepped closer. Answer me. Dr. Sato inhaled slowly. Mr. Vale, there is something you need to see. He turned the tablet around. A scan from years ago appeared on the screen. And there it was. The obstruction. Visible. Clear. Obvious. Dorian's face went blank. His voice came out like broken glass. That scan is from when she was 5. Dr. Sato nodded once uneasy. Yes. Dorian's hands started to shake, and it was there. Yes. Dorian's eyes burned. So somebody saw it. Dr. Sato's silence was the loudest thing in the room. Dorian leaned in, voice low, dangerous. So somebody chose not to remove it. Dr. Sato swallowed. The report attached to that scan does not emphasize it. Dorian's breath hitched. Does not emphasize it, he repeated, disbelieving. My daughter's obstruction does not get emphasized. Myra's stomach dropped. She could feel the room tipping into something darker. Dorian's eyes snapped up. Who wrote the report? Dr. Sato hesitated. Dr. Lennox Rourke signed the final. Dorian's face hardened. That name was familiar. Dr. Lennox Rourke was one of the famous specialists who had told Dorian to accept the irreversible verdict. He had smiled. He had patted Dorian's shoulder. He had spoken about experimental programs and long-term plans. He had also billed Dorian for consultations that cost more than most people's houses. Dorian whispered. That man looked me in my face. Myra's eyes widened. Sir. Dorian turned toward Mara like he had just remembered she existed. His expression wasn't anger now. It was something worse. Betrayed. He walked to Liana and crouched. His hands trembled as he signed clumsily. I'm sorry. Then he spoke softly too, because Liana could hear now. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice breaking. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. Liana looked at him, confused, then reached up and touched his cheek. Dad's sad. Dorian laughed once, broken, then pulled her close. Yes, baby, Dad is sad. He lifted his head toward Dr. Sato. I want every record, every scan, every email, every note. Dr. Sato hesitated. Mr. Vale. Dorian snapped, now. Dr. Sato nodded. We can request archives. Dorian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He answered without looking. What? A voice on the other end sounded tense. Sir, Dr. Rourke is on line 1. He says it's urgent. Dorian's blood went cold. Dr. Rourke. Already. Dorian stared at Dr. Sato. How does he know I'm here? Dr. Sato's face tightened. High-profile patient alerts happen sometimes. Dorian's jaw clenched. Put him through. He put the phone on speaker. A smooth voice filled the room like oil. Dorian, I heard Liana is being reevaluated. Dorian's eyes burned. Reevaluated, he repeated. Of course, Dr. Rourke continued calm. These cases can be complicated. Sometimes families misunderstand results. Dorian leaned forward, voice low. Did you see the obstruction on her scan 3 years ago? A pause, brief, controlled. I'd have to review the image, Dr. Rourke said smoothly. You know how busy my practice is. Dorian's laugh was cold. Busy taking my money. Dorian, Dr. Rourke said, voice gentle, almost fatherly. You're emotional, I understand. Your wife's death, your stress. You are looking for someone to blame. Myra felt the hairs rise on her arms. Dr. Rourke had just weaponized Seleni's death. Dorian's knuckles whitened around the phone. Don't you ever mention my wife. Apologies, Dr. Rourke said quickly, then continued in the same calm tone. Let's focus on solutions. If there was an obstruction, it may have been minor or transient. These things happen. Dorian's voice shook with fury. It was not minor. A maid pulled it out. My child said Dad today. Another pause. Then Dr. Rourke's voice sharpened slightly, still polished. A maid performed a medical procedure on your daughter. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Yes, because you didn't. Dr. Rourke sighed, theatrical. Dorian, that's extremely concerning. Unlicensed intervention on a child. There are legal consequences. Myra's stomach dropped. Dorian turned toward Mara. He's threatening you. Dr. Rourke continued, voice smooth again. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm protecting Liana. The authorities may need to be involved for her safety. Myra whispered, Sir. Dorian lifted a hand to stop her. His voice turned icy. Dr. Rourke, if you call the police on my employee for saving my child, I will burn your entire career to the ground. A low chuckle came through the speaker. You can try, but consider this, Dorian. Scandals hurt children. They become headlines. They become trauma. You don't want Liana's name dragged through the world, do you? Dorian's breath hitched. Because that was true. Dr. Rourke knew exactly where to stab. Here, What we'll do, Dr. Rourke said softly. You come to my clinic tomorrow. Privately, we reframe this situation. We ensure your maid is dealt with quietly, perhaps a settlement, a non-disclosure agreement, and you and I remain amicable. Dorian stared at the phone like it had turned into a snake. You want me to protect you? I want to protect your family, Dr. Rourke replied. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Dorian's voice came out like steel. It's already bigger. He ended the call. The room was silent. Liana whispered, Dad mad. Dorian looked at his daughter and his face cracked with pain. Yes, baby, Dad is mad. Myra's voice shook. Sir, I'm sorry, I never wanted to cause trouble. Dorian turned toward her sharply. No, don't you dare apologize for saving my child. Myra blinked, stunned. Dorian took a breath that looked like it hurt. But we have a problem, he said, voice tight. Because men like him don't threaten, they act. As if summoned by his words, one of the security guards stepped into the doorway. Sir, he said carefully, there are 2 officers at the front desk asking for you. Myra's blood turned cold. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Already. The guard nodded. They said there was a report of child endangerment. Myra's knees almost buckled. Liana looked around, frightened. Police. Myra swallowed. Yes, she whispered, then forced a smile for Liana and signed, It's okay, you're safe. Dorian's jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. He turned to Myra. Listen to me, he said fast. You don't say another word without my lawyer present. Myra nodded quickly, panic rising. Sir, I swear I didn't hurt her. I know, Dorian said, voice fierce. I know, and I'm not letting them turn you into the villain. He crouched beside Liana and signed clumsily, then spoke softly too. Baby, you need to tell them Myra helped you, okay? Liana nodded, eyes wide. Myra help. Dorian stood and walked toward the door like a man marching into war. 2 officers waited outside. Mr. Vale, one said, polite but firm. We received a report that a domestic worker attempted a medical procedure on your child. Dorian's eyes were cold. Attempted, my child can hear. The officer blinked. Sir, we still need to ask some questions. Dorian leaned forward slightly. You can ask, but you will not intimidate my staff. You will not remove anyone from this hospital, and you will not frighten my daughter. The officer's gaze slid toward Myra, then toward Liana. Liana stared at them, trembling. Dorian softened instantly, crouching beside her. It's okay, he whispered. Look at me. Liana looked at him. Dorian signed slowly. Tell truth. Liana turned back to the officers and spoke, voice small and shaky. Myra, help. Ear hurt. Myra, fix. The officers exchanged a look. The second officer cleared his throat. Mr. Vale, we need to speak with the domestic worker. Dorian straightened. You can speak to her with my attorney present. The officer frowned. Sir, that may not be necessary. Dorian's smile was sharp. It's necessary. Myra's hands trembled. She whispered, Sir, I can't afford a lawyer. Dorian didn't look away from the officers. Then you have one. The officers hesitated. Dorian's phone buzzed again. This time, it was his lawyer. Dorian answered, Yes. The lawyer's voice came through tight. Sir, we have a situation. There are already rumors online. Someone leaked that your daughter's condition may have been misdiagnosed. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Dr. Rourke. Most likely, the lawyer said. He may try to control the narrative first. Dorian's jaw clenched. Myra whispered, He's doing this because he's guilty. Dorian looked at Myra, then at Liana, then back at the officers. His face hardened into decision. He turned to the officers. You want to investigate? Fine, he said, but you're going to investigate the right people. The officers stared. Dorian's voice rose slightly, controlled but fierce. My child suffered for 8 years while an obstruction sat in her ear. It was visible on scans. It was ignored. That is negligence. If you want a case, start there. The officer hesitated. Mr. Vale, this is a medical matter. Dorian stepped closer, then treat it like a crime. The officers looked uncomfortable now. The second officer cleared his throat. We're not equipped to handle. Dorian cut him off. Then call whoever is equipped. The officers left with stiff politeness, clearly not expecting a billionaire to point the spotlight away from the poor maid and toward powerful doctors. Mara exhaled shakily. Liana looked up at Mara and whispered, Mara's scared. Mara's heart broke. She nodded slightly. Yes, she whispered, a little. Liana reached for Mara's hand and squeezed it. I hear you, she said slowly, eyes wide with wonder at her own words. Mara's eyes filled. You hear me, she whispered, voice shaking. Dorian watched them, something shifting in his face. Like he was seeing a truth he had ignored. That Mara had been the first person to truly see his daughters suffering as more than a diagnosis. Back at the mansion later that night, everything felt different. Not calmer. More dangerous. Dorian moved quickly, snapping orders. Security on every entrance, he said. No one enters without clearance. Mrs. Glenwood stood rigid. Sir, what is going on? Dorian's eyes flashed. What's going on is that my daughter was failed by people I trusted, and now they're trying to punish the woman who fixed what they ignored. Mrs. Glenwood's face paled. Sir, I warned Mara not to interfere. Mara flinched, guilt and anger twisting together. Dorian turned toward Mrs. Glenwood slowly. You warned her not to care, he said coldly, and she cared anyway. Mrs. Glenwood's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she looked ashamed. Liana stood near the staircase holding her stuffed rabbit, watching the adults with wide eyes. The mansion's usual silence was broken by the sound of her breathing, the tap of her feet, the faint tick of the hallway clock. She tilted her head toward the sound, fascinated, as if the house had been hiding music. Mara, Liana whispered, then smiled. Clock. Mara laughed through tears. Yes, baby, clock. Dorian's lawyer arrived within an hour, along with a private investigator. They sat in Dorian's office, while Liana stayed with Mara in the adjacent room. Dorian slammed a folder onto the desk. I want everything, he said. Every record, every scan, every report. I want to know who saw it and who buried it. The lawyer nodded. We can file requests, but if this is as systemic as it looks, they'll fight back. Dorian's eyes were cold. Let them. The investigator leaned forward. Sir, Dr. Rourke is connected. He sits on boards. He has friends in media. Dorian's jaw tightened. Then we go public. The lawyer held up a hand. Sir, public can protect you, but it can also expose your daughter. Dorian's face cracked for a moment as he glanced toward the room where Liana sat with Mara. I won't make her a spectacle. The investigator nodded. Then we need a controlled release, proof first, then narrative. Dorian's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered, What? Dr. Rourke's voice slid through. Dorian, you're making a mistake. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Stop calling me. You're angry, Dr. Rourke said softly. Anger makes people reckless. I can still help you. I can still help Liana. Dorian's laugh was bitter. Help her the way you helped her for 8 years. A pause. Then Dr. Rourke's voice sharpened, still calm. If you push this, you'll learn what it feels like to have enemies. I would hate for your maid to suffer consequences, or for her grandmother's nursing home to suddenly have issues. Mara, listening from the doorway, went cold. He knew about her grandmother. Dorian's face went murderous. You threatened her. I'm warning you, Dr. Rourke replied. Make a wise choice. Dorian's voice dropped. Here's my wise choice. You're done. He hung up. The lawyer's face tightened. Sir, that was a threat. We need to document everything. Dorian nodded, eyes hard. Do it. Mara stepped into the room, trembling. Sir, he knows about my grandmother. Dorian's gaze snapped to her. He touched your family. Mara nodded, panic rising. What do I do? Dorian's voice softened slightly. You stay here. You're under my protection. Mara's eyes filled. Sir, I never asked for. Dorian cut her off. You didn't ask to save my daughter either, and you still did it. Liana's voice drifted in from the other room, small and curious. Dad. Dorian's face softened instantly. He stood and walked to her. Yes, baby. Liana looked up at him, eyes bright. You loud, she said carefully, then giggled like she couldn't believe she could hear the difference between loud and soft. Dorian swallowed hard and forced a smile. I'm sorry, I'll be softer. Liana nodded solemnly, then whispered, Mara good. Dorian's throat tightened. Yes, he murmured, Mara is good. Over the next 2 days, the escalations came fast. A tabloid site posted a vague story about a billionaire's miracle child, hinting at scandal. A hospital spokesperson released a statement implying the family was misinterpreting medical information. Someone leaked a rumor that Mara was unstable, that she had hurt children before, a disgusting lie designed to make the public doubt her. Mara sat in the staff kitchen trembling as she scrolled her phone, hands shaking. They're calling me a monster, she whispered. Liana climbed into the chair beside her and watched her face, worried. Mara, sad. Mara tried to smile. No, baby, I'm okay. Liana shook her head, serious. You cry. Mara's eyes filled. Yes, she admitted softly. I'm crying. Liana touched Mara's cheek gently, then whispered, No go. Mara blinked. No go. Liana nodded firmly. Mara, stay. Mara's chest tightened. I can't always stay, baby. Liana frowned, then signed clumsily. Family. Mara stared, tears spilling. You think I'm family? Liana nodded like it was obvious. Across the room, Dorian watched them and felt something break inside him. He had tried to buy solutions for years. But here was the truth. His daughter didn't need money right now. She needed safety. And so did the woman who saved her. That evening, Dorian called a press team to his office. The lawyer protested. Sir, if you go public, you cannot take it back. Dorian's eyes were steady. They already went public. I'm just taking control. He looked at Mara. Are you willing? Mara's face went pale. Sir, I'm scared. Dorian nodded. I'm scared too, but if we stay quiet, they'll bury you. Mara swallowed. Then I'll stand. Dorian's gaze softened. Good. When cameras arrived, Dorian stood in front of a plain backdrop. No mansion glamour, no flashy wealth, just a father with tired eyes. He spoke carefully. My daughter, Liana Vale, has lived in silence for 8 years. We were told her condition was irreversible, he said. We pursued every option offered by top specialists worldwide. He paused, jaw tightening. 2 days ago, my daughter regained hearing after a physical obstruction was removed from her ear. The room murmured. Dorian continued, controlled but burning. We have evidence that this obstruction was visible in past scans and was not addressed. We are investigating why. A reporter leaned forward. Are you accusing doctors of negligence? Dorian's eyes locked on the camera. I'm accusing someone of choosing profit over a child. Mara stood off camera, hands shaking, holding Liana's hand. Liana looked up at her and whispered, Lights bright. Mara smiled through tears. Yes, baby, bright. Another reporter asked, Who removed the obstruction? Dorian hesitated, then said clearly, A member of our household staff noticed my daughter's pain and acted when everyone else dismissed it. The reporter's eyebrows shot up. A maid performed the procedure. Dorian's voice hardened. A human being helped my child. That is what matters. The clip went viral within an hour. People split into camps. Some called it a miracle. Some called it negligence. Some called Mara a hero. Some called her reckless. And then the real threat came. A formal charge was filed against Mara for unauthorized medical intervention. Officers arrived at the mansion again. Liana heard the knock and panicked, hands flying to her ears. No, no police. Mara knelt in front of her, signing fast. Breathe. Safe. Dad here. Dorian stormed to the door, lawyer beside him. The officers spoke. We have a warrant. Dorian's smile was cold. And I have proof you're being used. The lawyer stepped forward and handed them documents. Before you take anyone, you should read this. It included the scan, the timestamp, and the signature of Dr. Work's department. It included emails obtained through the investigator showing staff had flagged the obstruction, then were told to defer, monitor, maintain course. It included a note from a junior radiology tech who had tried to raise concerns and was shut down. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. Dorian leaned in, voice low. If you arrest my maid while ignoring a medical cover-up, you will be arresting the wrong person in front of the whole world. The officers hesitated. One finally said, We'll need to consult our supervisor. Dorian nodded. Do that. They left. Mara collapsed into a chair, shaking. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't fight rich doctors. Dorian crouched beside her. You're not fighting them alone. Mara's voice broke. Why are you doing all this? Dorian stared at her, eyes wet. Because my daughter said Dad for the first time in her life because of you. Mara swallowed, tears spilling. And because, Dorian continued, voice breaking, I realized I've been worshipping expertise and money, thinking it would save me from pain. But it didn't. You did. Liana walked over slowly, listening to their voices like she was still learning how emotions sounded. Dad, she said softly. Dorian turned instantly. Yes, baby. Liana looked at Mara, then at Dorian. Mara, stay, please. Dorian's throat tightened. She's staying. Liana smiled, then whispered, good. Weeks passed. Liana began therapy. She discovered rain. She discovered music. She discovered that her own laughter was a sound, and it made her giggle even more. But the fight didn't stop. Dr. Work's team offered Dorian a private settlement with one condition: silence. Dorian read the offer, then tore it in half. No, he said calmly, not this time. The case went to court. Mara sat trembling, hands clasped, while Dorian's lawyers presented the evidence. The opposing side tried to paint Mara as reckless. She endangered a child, one attorney insisted. Mara's stomach twisted. Then Liana was called to speak. The judge leaned forward gently. Liana, can you tell us what happened? Liana stood on a stool so she could be seen, small in a big courtroom. She looked around, nervous. Mara signed to her from the front row. Breathe, truth. Liana swallowed and spoke slowly. My ear hurt, always hurt. The courtroom went still. She continued, voice trembling but clear. Doctors say nothing, Dad's sad. Dorian's eyes filled. Liana pointed toward Mara. Mara, look. Mara, see. Mara, help. The opposing attorney tried to interrupt. Your Honor. The judge lifted a hand. Let her speak. Liana's voice shook. Mara, gentle. Mara, stop when hurt. Then I hear. Her eyes widened as she remembered, like the memory itself was loud. I hear clock, she said softly, smiling. Tick, tick. Some people in the courtroom wiped their eyes. Liana looked at Dorian and whispered, Dad. Dorian's shoulders shook. The judge's face softened. That day, the charges against Mara were dismissed. The court ordered a broader investigation into the medical records and the institutions involved. Dr. Work's name became a headline, not a trophy. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded. Mara tried to hide. Dorian held her shoulder firmly. Stand, he whispered. You've earned it. Mara swallowed, voice shaky. I didn't do it for fame. Dorian nodded. I know. A reporter shouted, Mara, what made you do it? Mara hesitated, then said the truth. Because I saw a child suffering, she said, voice trembling. And I've lost someone before because people didn't care fast enough. I refuse to watch it happen again. Another reporter shouted, "Do you think you're a hero?" Mara shook her head. "No, I think I'm human." Dorian's voice came firm beside her. "And in my house, being human will always matter more than being important." That night, back at the mansion, it rained. Liana stood by the open balcony door, face lifted, eyes wide, listening. "Dad," she whispered, amazed. "Rain." Dorian walked up behind her, careful not to startle her. "Yes, baby, rain." Liana laughed, a full laugh, then cried immediately after because emotions came fast now, crashing into her like waves. Mara stepped beside them, wiping her eyes. Liana turned to her. "Mara, hear rain too." Mara smiled through tears. "Yes, baby, I hear it." Liana's face tightened suddenly. "Mom," she whispered. Dorian froze. Mara's heart clenched. Dorian swallowed hard. "You want to hear Mom?" Liana nodded slowly. "Mom voice." Dorian's eyes filled. He turned and walked to a locked drawer in the study. He returned holding an old phone. Mara's breath caught. She could feel grief in the object like electricity. Dorian knelt in front of Liana. His voice shook. "Your mom recorded something when she was pregnant. I couldn't play it before. It hurt too much." Liana stared at the phone, eyes wide. "Play." Dorian's hands trembled as he pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room, soft and warm, like sunlight in sound. "Hi, my sweet girl," Selini's recorded voice said. "If you're hearing this one day, it means you're here. It means you made it, and I'm so proud of you." Liana's eyes widened, as if her soul recognized the voice. Her mouth opened, a trembling inhale. Selini's voice continued. "I won't be able to hold you the way I want, but your daddy will, and he loves you. He loves you so much it scares him. Be patient with him, okay?" Dorian's face crumpled. He covered his mouth, shaking. Selini's voice softened even more. "And if the world ever feels too big, remember this. You are not broken. You are not less. You are loved, always." Liana started crying, loud, shaking sobs that startled her, then made her laugh through tears because she could hear herself. "Mama," she whispered, voice cracked. Dorian reached for her. "Yes," he choked. "That's Mama." Liana turned toward Dorian, eyes wet. "Dad, you okay?" Dorian let out a broken laugh. "No," he whispered, "but yes." Liana reached up and touched his cheek the way she had when she first heard him. "Dad, I hear." Dorian pulled her into his arms. "I'm here too," he whispered. "I'm here." Mara watched them, tears streaming, heart swelling with the kind of ache that hurts and heals at the same time. Dorian looked up at Mara suddenly, voice thick. "I owe you everything." Mara shook her head. "Sir, you don't owe me." Dorian's eyes burned. "I do, but I won't repay you with money. I'll repay you with respect." He stood, wiped his face, then said, "Mara Quinn, if you want, this house can be your home too. Not as staff, as family." Mara's breath caught. "Sir." Liana turned quickly. "Family," she repeated, smiling. Mara's voice broke. I don't know what to say." Dorian's smile was small and real for the first time in years. "Say yes." Mara laughed through tears. "Yes." Liana clapped her hands, delighted by the sound. "Yes." Outside, rain fell harder. Inside, the mansion felt lighter, like grief had finally loosened its grip. Weeks later, Dorian launched a foundation in Selini's name to fund care for children whose families could not afford specialists, and to audit hospitals that profited from hopelessness. He didn't do it for headlines. He did it because the world had almost stolen 8 years of sound from his daughter, and he refused to let it happen to anyone else. One evening, as Liana practiced speaking in the living room, she stopped suddenly and looked at Mara. "Mara," she said carefully, shaping the word with pride. Mara's chest tightened. "Yes, baby." Liana smiled mischievously. "You, my hero." Mara laughed softly and shook her head. "No, sweetheart, I'm just the person who paid attention." Liana frowned, thinking, then nodded as if that made sense. She turned to Dorian. "Dad." Dorian looked up instantly. Yes. Liana's eyes sparkled. I love you. Dorian froze, then his face crumpled with emotion. I love you too, he whispered. Liana grinned, then added, and Mara. Mara laughed. Hey, I'll take it. Dorian looked at Mara and said quietly, Thank you. Mara nodded, eyes shining. You're welcome. And just like that, in a house once haunted by silence, the most expensive thing in the world was no longer money. It was the sound of a little girl's voice, finally free. If this story moved you, do not just scroll. Hit the like button so YouTube knows you want more stories like this. Subscribe for the more stories like this and comment if you stayed to the end. And tell me in the comments, do you think Dr. Rourke deserved prison or was losing his career enough?